Hey, I'm Lisa Manfredi, and I learned some very hard lessons about money, working a corporate job, contributing to the standard systems. And when I learned about how dramatic those things impacted my life and made some pretty big changes that have affected my life, I really wanted to share them because these are not things that we're taught. And we have contributions to make in the world. And if we are not financially sound and we're worried about surviving, we can't make those contributions. So it's my mission to help share my very biased perspective based on the things that I have learned and executed in my own life to those in my community. And that's Brahm. He's just super cute. The wealth battle in your life. You've been lied to. There's a massive battle raging in your life that you've been duped out of knowing about. It's the battle for your wealth, not your money, but your wealth. So this talk is recorded. Anything you say can and will be used to help other people set themselves up for financial success. So let's get to it. What is wealth? Wealth is an abundance of health, wealth, and happiness. To be wealthy is to be in a position to not be bounced around by circumstances, to do the things that I want to do, to take advantage of opportunities that I want to not worry about necessities and just surviving, and to build legacy. So let's go through an example. So you're driving along one day and all of a sudden you hear a pop, or in my case, my dash sends me an alert that my tire pressure is low, caution. And it's a small example, but it's pretty relevant to most of us. If you need new tires, it could cost you a couple $100s for a whole set, plus maybe $100 to have a tow to the nearest tire shop. And for some people, this could spell doom. According to the Federal Reserve Survey on U.S. household financial health, 40% of Americans can't come up with $400 in an emergency. And that's a lot of people thrown underwater by one or two new tires. So what do we do about this? What if your earning potential was severely limited for a year or more? Would you be able to make it? Or would you be full of stress? So check this out and be prepared to be horrified. There's a lot of horror in finance. This kind of stuff really makes me squirm. So the median savings figures here are more telling, as some prodigious savers will skew the average numbers. So these aren't savings per year. This is total savings as of the date of the survey. So people who earn $70,000 a year save less than 10% of a year's spending in a liquid fashion to cover for anything that comes up in life. This scares me. We need to position ourselves better. So why am I here? Why do I share my perspective? Well, for me, it's so that we aren't bounced around by circumstance. So we can increase our autonomy. So we have the resources to do the things, make the contributions, contribute to change. And so we can make the old systems obsolete. In order to achieve this mission, we need to have a good foundation. We need knowledge and active engagement in our financial lives. We all need to evaluate risk and be good underwriters. What's the reality today? A lot of people are trapped in the rat race, in the world of have to, where our outflows exceed our inflows, where you feel like you're struggling just to make ends meet, and where you're stressed morning, noon, and night about what's going to happen. What's the key to dropping the stress? The key is IBORSI. So you weren't taught this nonsense in school, but this is good nonsense. When we don't need no stinking slick mnemonics, IBORSI will probably stick in your minds, maybe. IBORSI. So what's so powerful about IBORSI? It stands for income, budget, opportunity, ascend, reduced, speculate, and escape. For those of you who haven't already visited wealthbattle.com/free, head there and join the Discord. I'll be referring to this link a lot because it's important to level up your financial education to be more resilient in life. So now, for those of you who have already visited wealthbattle.com/free, thank you for your kindness as I record this for future wealth battlers. We're going to focus for a moment on some of the content from Escape the Rat Race 4, Ascending Cash Flows. Responsibility is the name of the game. Do your own underwriting. Evaluate risks. This will look different for each of us. Some people just feel more comfortable Scrooge McDucking it and losing to inflation and opportunity costs. They think in nest egg terms. Others leverage and take risks. It's important to understand how you operate and what's actually possible. The term underwriter originated from the practice of having each risk taker write their names under the total amount of risk they were willing to accept for a specified premium. We can keep the sentiment, but use it more broadly to strategize and choose our unique financial paths. Kaysen chuckled when I mentioned underwriter because he heard undertaker. And that's really clever, because if you don't assess the risk properly on your end, you could lose all sorts of things: your car, your house, your dignity, and ain't nobody got time for that. Underwriting involves conducting research and assessing the degree of risk that each applicant or entity brings to the table before assuming that risk. So an underwriter must clearly balance due diligence and very subjective self-evaluation. Risk is the underlying factor in all underwriting. You are an underwriter. You assess and determine what risks you can take on every day, all day long. It's financial, relational, emotional, temporal, all of it. Professionals on the other end of deals and transactions are doing underwriting. Make sure you do yours too, because failure to underwrite properly results in mortgages in default, delinquent car loans, IOUs being disrespected. It's just disappointment, despair. None of it's good. And there's a lot of underwriting to be done, because we don't operate in a vacuum. We aren't in deals with ourselves. There's social capital, reputation, credit, all kinds of things that come into play. So along with being a good underwriter, I'm going to talk to you again about my good friend leverage. We want to use our resources to maximum advantage. And Wile E. Coyote, with that stupid coyote, always used like the little tiny stick and a giant rock. We can be smarter. You have control of how you position your resources. And when used smartly, leverage can be your best friend. I'm not so big, but I lift big things. And it's super helpful to have leverage on my side. So I've got a little secret. It's not a secret anymore because it's right there. Spoiler alert, we finance everything. So people think of it only as loans and debt instruments, but hello, using cash is totally financing too. There's opportunity costs associated with all of this. It's like staying in a bad relationship or a bad job. Like, what did you miss out on? Often we don't even know. We're oblivious to it. We've just missed it. So we'll explain that more later. But first, check this out. There are a few standard types of people when it comes to what they do with their money. There's the goody two-shoes saver. Are they really that smart? They save and they save and they save. Then they buy the thing, the house, the car, the course, and their savings drops to zero. And they start all over again. They save and they save until the next big purchase. Mind you, the saving takes a bit because it's riddled with a bunch of smaller purchases. But the point is, after a bunch of years, a bunch of decades even, where are you left? Where did you actually get? Most hover around zero. So we work all our lives to really be nowhere. On the other hand, there's the debtor. They use other people's money. That's really cool in theory, but consumer debt is expensive and can drown you. It's a slippery slope of debt destruction. And the debt snowball is a term for a reason. Interest rates are so high that often we go into deeper and deeper debt before we can get back to baseline. So where do we go? There are dishonest people, bad data, incorrect conclusions drawn from good data, government interventions, financial planners, all kinds of hoops. But do not fear, there is a hero who can help mitigate risk. Enter the writer. Wait, no, not that kind. That kind leads to me being in helicopters like that one, which I was in. Not good. Gets me into trouble. Let's use these snooze, perhaps, but snoozy, boring ones, because writers help customize deals to fit everyone's specific needs. I like custom things. So where do we even begin? How do you analyze those needs in a specific deal? So we've come up with a framework for conceptualizing your financial strategy. And it involves this lumpy pyramid-ish of wealth battle. At the top, we have the all-seeing eye. I mean the speculative deals, where you do not have control over the outcome at all. This is the hopes and prayers section of the pyramid. Oddly enough, this is where most financial gurus I've seen say to park your money as a first step, neglecting the remaining foundation and leading to absolutely catastrophic results. We've seen this plenty of times, and it'll keep happening. Failure to underwrite, well, it's not good. Don't do it. So that brings us back to the pyramid. The foundation of the pyramid of wealth battle is in savings, emergency, and opportunity funds. And not just putting them anywhere, putting them in places where you can grow, protect, and use your funds. Control of your money with guarantees and liquidity. How much is enough here? You must determine a comfortable amount. Is it a percentage of income or a number of months of living expenses? This is going to be up to you. It's very subjective. Some people want an absolute amount of money, like $1,000 for emergencies. Others, like Kaysen, calculate 60 plus days of his current outflows at all times. And these are baked into his budget. So he's not bounced around by circumstance. He's very well prepared. I think more in terms of buckets, plus thinking of buckets of cash is kind of fun. So you need to assess your risk and be confident in establishing a financial foundation that works for you. This is your life. After building on the foundation of savings, it's time to focus on what comes next. What's the next tier? The next tier up is direct investments. This is where you have direct control over whatever it is that you're investing in. There's usually cash flow, there's the collateral, and it's fairly consistent. You can invest in yourself, your business, hard assets like real estate that you own and control. And there's room here to be creative in each tier. You could buy the property next door. You could have eyes on it. You can make nice with the tenants. You could directly choose the tenants. You can meet them. You could fix the toilet yourself. So you have ultimate control over what's happening to your property. You can even rent out extra rooms in your house. I did this. I had a giant house. I used a very small fraction of it myself, and I enjoy alternative income sources. Sometimes. So during the COVID TP crisis, I actually had a tenant that asked if toilet paper was included in the lease. And it was one of those moments I'm like, what are we talking about? So then soon after this TP lease incident, I was walking down the street and I saw this car with a flagrant display of toilet paper. Weren't people taught not to keep valuables in sight? That's the stuff that gets you in trouble. Anyway, moving on. You can do a direct investment where you don't have a direct line of sight, where you can work through a representative, but with something you directly own and ultimately control. So direct investing includes investing in yourself. Most of the money in your life will flow through you. So investing in courses and missions like Wealth Battle, wealthbattle.com, increase your knowledge and expand what's actually possible for you in your life. You could start a business. I did this. So my background's in neuroscience. I did technical sales in the corporate world for some time. Then I woke up and got out, and I used these strategies to fund my own business. I purchased the lab equipment I had been selling and furnished some labs. That was my first foray into cash flow without toilets, and life hasn't been the same since. Cash flows come in all flavors. And just because popular books focus on one thing, like real estate, doesn't mean that's the only way. Not everyone is up to the same things. And that's a really awesome thing. So I was comfortable performing the underwriting for the lab and the lab equipment since I knew the equipment well. Lean into your strengths and use your knowledge and experience in everything you do. We're often too quick to reject systems or establishments, but this gave me a huge leg up. So once you have a solid foundation, you're comfortable with your direct investments, and have some extra cash flow, you can consider another tier up. Don't have to. The goal is not to get to the top of the pyramid. You define your goal. Indirect investing is the next tier up, but staying in tier 1 and tier 2 is a perfectly reasonable strategy, and many very wealthy individuals have never moved above tier 2. Because risk increases as you move up and control decreases. And a key to financial success is not losing money. So, tier 3, indirect control, what does that even mean? It means that there aren't guarantees. There's limited collateral. There's either no control or the control is given to another body. So the risk is much higher. And that doesn't mean throw in your chips and walk away. It just means the underwriting remains very, very valuable here. So mitigate risk as best you can. Tier 3 can include investments like private lending with collateral, early stage angel funding, syndications. And I've participated in a few syndications. That's where private investors pool their money to participate in a much larger deal than any one of the investors could do herself. So I get regular investor updates as a courtesy to let us know how things are progressing. And one of the updates from an assisted living deal, and I quote, said, "We've been throwing a lot of spaghetti on the walls. The biggest challenge is finding the most bang for our buck while staying within our meager budget." Like, what? When I read this, I was like, this is not something any investor wants to hear. But what power did I have? They already had control over my money. Like, I could voice my appall and guarantee to be left in the dark in the future. Could roll up my sleeves and chip in to protect the money already in the project, but that would cost me time and money. Like, there's a cost to that. I could sit back and hope they pulled together. None of those things are ideal. So welcome to the world of passive investment. Be a stellar underwriter, because the work that you do up front will matter. So back to something positive. Remember this equipment from tier 2? The equity in the business falls into tier 3. So I'm pulling from 2 buckets. I'm especially proud of this deal because I sold the equipment when I was employed in corporate America. I then bought it back from my former customer when I went out on my own, and then leased it to the lab at a premium. And I got equity. It was pretty sweet. All right, so we're climbing and climbing to tier 4. The tier of no guarantees, no collateral, speculation. The tier where you could lose all. I wouldn't touch speculation until maybe 90% of your assets are in the bottom 3 tiers and you have a good understanding of how to use your money and what you're up to. Because the thing is, we're often told to do the reverse, start at the top, trust the professionals. But do we know why? What is that going to get us? Is there a high reward? How big is the risk? So I've spoken with a lot of people that got lucky with both crypto and stocks. Quite a few people purchase stocks with a hope and a prayer for the future. And these same people don't have steady income or adequate reserve funds. What if it goes down? Do they just hold on to it? For how long? What if they could use that money elsewhere? What if they need it today? What's the actual cost of making such moves? What about the opportunity cost? How many people have seen their stocks soar and then drop back down, having never realized any of the gains? Then what was the point? Many others lost huge percentages of their portfolios in the dot-com bubble and in 2008. What is to come? Is it worth risking all your hard-earned money for potential gains that are guaranteed to be taxed? Qualified plans, retirement plans are important to understand, and we'll dive into those too. Hard money lending is an interesting one. Uncollateralized, high risk, high reward loans. I've had both success and failure in this realm. I participated in some hard money deals with little to no collateral and based entirely on my relationship and underwriting on the person. We are often asked, but what about the roads? Well, I personally funded a sidewalk and an HVAC system. Both did me well and made my portfolio a bit more weird. So back to the wealth battle.com/free. Seriously, go there, wealthbattle.com/free. Enjoy the Discord if you have not already. So now that you have a framework for underwriting and mitigating risk, let's talk about the wealth battle. This isn't the only way to consider it, but the framework may help. Imagine a battle. There's two ways to win. I mean, I'm not a military expert or any kind of expert, but there are two main things that are important. There's an offense and a defense. So when we're on the offensive, focus on earnings, ask for a raise, negotiate remote work agreements. Think, how do I make more money without trading more time? How do I reduce my time commitments without compromising my earnings? Maybe have my own business and I could raise rates, hire contractors or employees. I could sell time leverage products instead of time intensive services. I could build joint ventures to force multiply with people on the same path. I could create upsells, downsells, cross sells. There's a lot that's possible. Investments, stocks and bonds and mutual funds and ETFs and cryptocurrency, they're all possible. They're all risky to different degrees. Think of a lottery ticket as a good strategy to building wealth. For some people, maybe it is. Maybe it works. There's no shame. It's a judgment-free zone. Just may not be the smartest first move or any move. But I've found something that blew my mind. I think Kaysen's too, when I learned about it. And that's how to leverage a little known secret in insurance, where you can be your own bank. To solve this problem, we need to understand what the banking system is, how we are dependent on it, and what an alternative path looks like. There are two players in the financial world that most see as a yin and a yang. The good side is normally the banks. A bank holds funds from depositors and provides funds to borrowers. Typically, we think of this as a safe, secure place for our funds. A depositor stores money in the bank for benefit, interest, secure conveniences, bill pay, mobile apps. A borrower uses people's money to make purchases, maybe for mortgages, auto loans, commercial loans, you name it. There's also shareholders of a bank, where the profits are paid to the owners and the driving force behind short-term profit thinking. So there have been a lot of stories. Wells Fargo has been busted for a number of scummy things. One was fraudulently opening accounts without client consent. Why? Well, it sounds to me like an act of desperation to hit certain targets, to be able to charge fees. So, is your money really safe? Both depositor and borrower are paying for the show. Without the depositor, there can be no borrower. Without a borrower, there can be no banking system in its current incarnation. So how does this work? Are you ready? Depositor Dave shows up. He deposits $1,000 in Bank Inc. In exchange, Bank Inc. agrees to pay Dave 1% interest. Now, realize we're being incredibly generous with 1%, but let's go with it. Previously, interests, they were significant. But then it became more and more about conveniences, the apps, the bill pay, the security. So for now, we'll go with 1%. Borrow Bob shows up and banking loans him $1,000 at 10% interest. 1% to the depositor and 10% from the borrower. So my brain wants to say 9%. 9% goes to the bank. 9% ain't too shabby, but I've seen the pillars and the marble at the banks and something's not adding up. Turns out it's the dollars. So let's break down the numbers a bit. Dave earns $10 in interest from his $1,000. So it costs the bank $10 to have Dave's money to loan out to borrowers. The bank earns $100 from Bob's loan. So I must have carried the one wrong initially. That's not 9%. That's 900%. 900%? Like what? That starts to make things look a lot clearer. Now I know why I want to be the bank and not work with the bank. And that's just the beginning. The story gets even more interesting. So buckle up. Not only do the depositor and borrower make the whole system go while making the banks a lot of money, the banks use this voodoo magic called fractional reserve, where only a fraction of the deposits are backed by actual cash on hand and available for withdrawal. So what does that look like? We'll go through a lot of numbers. Stick with me. We can talk about it later. Depositor Dave deposits $1,000 in New Bank Inc. Borrow Bob comes along and the new bank has 90% of Dave's deposit to lend out to Bob. They keep 10% on reserve and loan out the remaining $900. Wait for the voodoo magic. Dave deposits $1,000 at the bank, fully expecting it to be there when he wants it. It's on his asset sheet. The bank then put Dave's money on its asset sheet and used it for Bob. So the bank made $1,000 turn into $1,900. Borrower Bob's pockets are full and he gives his $900 to salesman Sam. Sam then deposits his $900 into banking too. In walks borrower Billy, and the bank takes 90% of salesman Sam's money to loan to borrower Billy. Now, depositor Dave was the source of these transactions. His $1,000 has turned into $2,710. What? Now does it make sense why banks are making out so well? It's fascinating because if you don't pay back your loan, let's say your mortgage, the bank can foreclose on your property. But was it their money to begin with? It all came from depositors and was leveraged from there. So how much can be created from a $1,000 deposit? It's $10,000. This voodoo magic's pretty amazing. So Bank Inc. 1 gets 900% returns. Bank Inc. 2 gets 900% returns. It's a pretty fun game for the banks. And this shell game works until depositor Dave saunters into the bank and quite reasonably asks for his $1,000 back. When there aren't adequate reserves and people start asking for their money and it's not there, that's called a run on the banks. So think your money is safe at a bank. Think you're guaranteed access to your own funds. Maybe start thinking about banks like the creepy guy offering candy out of the sketchy van. Okay, so the funner fun, all the math that we just did, it no longer applies because banks can just lend and lend and lend and lend and lend. The reserve requirement was quietly removed in 2020. So there's nothing stopping them. It's unlimited. So if banks are the good and Wall Street is the baddie, Wall Street also has big, ostentatious buildings. They do lots of things. They broker accounts. They have qualified plans like 401ks, 403bs, 529 plans, mutual fund stocks. It is really where your wealth works for others. There are trillions of dollars in the industry. Why does that matter? Because they have the funds to hire the lobbyists, PR, academics, all the people touting the standard narrative. It creates a herd mentality like lemmings, participate in the 401k, buy safe stocks, etc. Most people follow along because they don't know better. They assume they aren't privy to the information the experts have. And so they appeal to authority. They don't want to look bad. They don't want to ask the questions. They don't know what questions to even ask. Risk is a function of control, and control is a function of education. So if you look at the pyramid of wealth battle, as you go up, your risk increases and your control decreases. Underwriting remains very valuable here. Mitigate risk as best you can. Wall Street falls way at the tippy top. It's not for beginners, maybe not for anyone. But you know what is? wealthbattle.com/free. Do it. Go now. All right. Understanding the responsibility of your financial choices. Do your own underwriting. If the banks and Wall Street don't have that yin-yang relationship, then what else is there? Is there a better way? I think so. It's called Be Your Own Bank. It's the best BYOB around. You can work with mutual companies, insurance companies owned by policy owners. They're private, for-profit companies. That means they aren't accountable for short-term profit seeking, and it allows them to make deals with long-term opportunities that may return optimally in the long term, but not in the short term. They can be smart about how they run things. They pay out dividends to policy owners. A percentage of profits are paid out annually to policy owners, and they're treated as an overpayment of the insurance premium. That means they're not taxable. You don't see this anywhere else. Dividends are not taxable. And they accrue cash value that you can withdraw in the form of a policy loan. And the crazy part is that the money you're borrowing isn't your money. It's the mutual company's money. You're staking your death benefit as collateral. And as a result, your cash value continues to increase, even while you've spent that money. It's often referred to as an and asset. Your money's doing multiple things for you at once. So let's review the standard models again. The saver is working on a scarcity mindset and striving to end life somewhere around $0. The debtor is struggling to resurface from the interest void. Now we have a third option. One who understands the wealth battle and creates their own bank through life insurance, where their money earns tax-free interest and dividends and actually takes advantage of compounding, uninterrupted throughout the course of their life. Einstein was on to compounding, and he was a smart dude. So let's look at a real example. This is a real life example of an actual insurance policy. You can see the internal rate of return. At year 5, $50,000 have been paid into the premium, and the cash value is $48,357. That doesn't look great until you consider that almost every dollar used to buy $1 million insurance policy is available to you. Maybe it'll pay for a down payment on a mortgage or a nice car outright. By year 15, you've paid $150,000 into premium. The cash value is about $216,000. The internal rate of return is 4.44%. This is like if that same $10,000 per year had earned 4.44% interest every year since day one. Where else can you find that tax-free? By year 30, cumulative premiums are $192,000. The policy can fund itself at this point, and it has a cash value of just under $600,000. That's 311% growth of funds in a safer than market vehicle, getting market advantage returns over time with liquidity all the way and no taxable events along the way since it's an insurance product. What about the tax considerations? Well, lucky, it's insurance. It's not an investment. So whether or not you have a life insurance need or not, that's the key. The IRS isn't interested. They look the other way. Where else do you get a guaranteed outcome? Because it's not correlated to the market, there's no ongoing hidden anything. Creating an opportunity savings fund that's bulletproof can be done with specific whole life policies. They're secure, liquid, you have the control. You can protect your income. They're private. They have tax advantages. There's an emphasis on cash value in life. They have long track records. They're protected from creditors. They offer guaranteed returns. They pay out tax-free dividends. And they're smart legacy products. These vehicles have been in existence since before 1913, before income tax. So they have very unique advantages. In wealth building, there are two main enemies. The greatest enemy is thyself. Most people are indoctrinated, brainwashed, MK Ultra'd into buying shit that doesn't really make their life much better before they can economically sustain the purchase. The car salesman asks, what do you want your payment to be, rather than what do you have to spend on a car? Clearly, they haven't budgeted with Kaysen. What are the biggest holes in budgets for the average consumer? It's things like vices, smoking, drinking. Retirement accounts with management fees are huge. Taxes, but we'll come to this one. Eating out, coffee, entertainment. It goes on and on. What's the fix? Well, budgeting. Know thy expenditure. It's the cardinal rule. That's a topic that would be too big to cover here. One of the best trainings on budgeting is at YNOB.com. You need a budget.com. And we also offer budgeting clinics through Wealth Battle, wealthbattle.com/budget. Budgeting is powerful and it can be fun. Just ask Kaysen. So if you didn't know, the government is naughty. Taxes are our biggest expenditures. Income tax, property tax, retirements, college funds, qualified plans, estate taxes. Being your own bank provides strategies to mitigate some of this damage. All that to say what? People think they're awake, yet they sleep through the most important battle in their life. And I'm on a mission to help people not be bounced around by circumstances, to increase freedom lovers' autonomy, and to ensure we have the resources to contribute to change and make the old systems obsolete. So I'd like to invite you to join our Discord to talk about the strategies discussed in this presentation. You can join at wealthbattle.com/free. We play games about finances and have a community of people who are trying to improve their offense and defense in the wealth battle in their own lives. So I hope to see you there and help you become more financially autonomous.